bit, but I don't think that you knew 100% that I was covering it today.
Okay, it's that place that you were trying to shoot?
Yes,
Cool.
it is.
I thought so, yeah.
Okay, absolutely. So I'm going to tell you all about Ashmore Estates, and I really, really want to go.
Yeah.
And I was looking at their calendar of walkthroughs and investigations, and they basically happen all the time. So
Sweet.
It's very doable. It's $50.
Okay. Maybe after I move.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm down. It's really not even like super duper far from us either. I think it'd be like a 2.5 hour drive.
Which is less than I drove this last weekend, so.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Chevy, by the way, asked me on Sunday, she's like, hey, what are you up to today? And I was in the middle of driving from Peoria back to Rockford to then drive home from Rockford. I forgot your fucking photos at my goddamn house.
I mean, I'm going to see you again in a few
I
days.
know.
I almost thought about gifting them to Liz because she bought the one print off of me and I thought that was nice and I don't know what I'm going to do with those. But then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll save them for the future because I can maybe use them again for another show or something.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
But we'll see. But I will get those from you soon.
Tell me a story.
I'm going to tell you a story. So from 1857 until 1869, the Coles County Poor Farm was located in Charleston Township, which is located near the small town of Loxa, Illinois.
Okay, when you're saying poor farm, is it like a workers' farm for poor folk?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yes.
I was wondering if we were on the same page or if it was just like named that for no reason.
So poor farm, poor house.
Yeah.
Or almshouse is apparently another really common term.
Yeah.
I think that almshouse is like, it was deemed to be more politically correct like later on down the road. So they started using that one more, but it was a poor farm.
I've heard poor house, I think, the most.
Yeah.
But poor farm, I totally understand for sure.
So when 1870 rolled around, the county decided to purchase 260 acres of land from a gentleman named A.N. Graham in Ashmore Township for a new poor farm. The small timber and brick building was constructed by H.B. Truman and was the first to sit on the property. The superintendent at the time, who was also called, quote, the overseer of the poor.
Was it in a positive way?
No.
I didn't think so.
I meant for that to be dripping with sarcasm,
Yeah,
but I don't know if
bet.
it came through. So
I heard it, but then I was like, maybe there's a silver lining.
But yes, so this quote, overseer of the poor, it was a man named Oliver D. Hawkins, and he had immigrated to Coles County from Kentucky in 1841. So, okay, none of that's really super exciting, but you've got a little bit of background now.
Yeah, well, I mean, poorhouses in general are pretty interesting, especially since we still use that as the name of a lot of bars that I enjoy. I have to take you, there's one a little bit far out, but you can play games and have flights and wine flights and beer flights and a bunch of other things there.
Oh,
You would like that place.
Don't you toy with my emotions.
Yeah, it's a good place. I like that place a lot.
So, like I said, a lot of articles will refer to it as an almshouse rather than a poorhouse, and they are really the same thing, but by definition, an almshouse is, quote, a house endowed by private charity for the reception and support of the aged or infirm poor.
Okay.
So we know what this is.
Yeah.
So you'd see a lot of sick people come through there, elderly people, homeless people, just folks with addictions or psychiatric issues. They could all come live in this place where the conditions were not super great and they would be put to work, but it was a place for them to live.
Right. Which is better than when you can't take care of yourself.
Yeah. And because all of these types of people would go to live there, this is also where a lot of them would end up dying too.
Right. Now,
Not a great way to go.
No. Question mark on this. Because there are some almshouses, poor houses, or poor farms that I've read that actually did compensate the people that were working there. But I've read more that people are basically in indentured servitude. Is this how this one was?
So I didn't read anything about people really being compensated other than just being able to have a place to live and being
food.
Fed.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
I was just wondering. It's very rare that they were compensated so they could actually get out of there.
I mean, it's a solid question, though, but I feel like indentured servitude is like not really a bad definition. Like, it's a pretty solid analogy.
Okay. I was waiting for you to be like, not really a bad thing, and I was like, no, Ty, no, history says that.
No. Nope. Not a great thing. Oh, so hot.
Hot.
Oh, indentured servants. What a dream.
What a treat.
Since, like I mentioned, a lot of people would end up dying there, The county had put together a small cemetery north of the poor farm, and in 1879, a man named Joshua Ricketts, who was the superintendent of the farm at the time, had recorded 32 deaths out of somewhere around 250 inmates who had stayed at the farm between the years 1870 and 1879. And you'll notice how I said, he had recorded that X out of this many amount of inmates were reported dead. A lot of the time, they referred to these people as inmates.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the way you talk about people when they are kind of free to go.
Yeah, just trying to, live.
Whatever, they're not rich enough to be human.
I had heard that during this period of time, every county had to have their own poor farm.
I could see that.
So depending on how big your county was, some people would have to travel a pretty fair amount to get to it.
Sure.
A few years after that, there was another cemetery for the poor that was created, and the bodies were moved over to that one, and it actually still exists. It's apparently just south of Route 16 in the area. That cemetery contains the graves of between 60 to 100 people. There is no exact number, so I'm thinking that might be because some people were maybe lost, and a lot of people just really aren't sure.
Because I would assume that because they were poor, they weren't marking the graves really nicely.
And and as we know with, Graceland Cemetery and Lincoln Park in Chicago,
unless there's fastidious records.
Yes, when people get moved, a lot of times, sadly, people get lost.
Truly.
In 1902, the Board of State Commissioners of Public Charities visited the poor farm. This is what they had to say about it at the time when they visited. Quote, "The heating is by stove and is sufficient. There is no regular system of ventilation, but plenty of fresh air is easily obtained. There is no plumbing. There is no fire protection." And in reference to the mentally ill residents at the farm, they wrote this: "There is no special provision for the insane. None are locked up or in restraint."
No. We heat this by fire, but have not fireproofed. Okay, question mark. By a stove, no ventilation. What? Mm-hmm. And let's just let all of these people run amok.
Yeah, and
with no treatment.
I'm not mad that they didn't have mentally ill people shackled up, but at the same time, saying there's no special provisions for them.
Yeah, which means that they're not getting medications.
Well, which to me reads as you're not really even taking care of them.
Yeah, you're just be free.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh.
That's really unfortunate.
They're all gardening without pants.
Man, I would though.
Okay, so that was in 1902 when they visited and made that report. But when 1912 rolled around, they had a very different report. So a lady from the state actually went out there to check out the farm.
The second time.
Yes, and her report said this. She said that the building had, quote, vermin-infected walls.
Cool.
Rough floors, small windows, and improper ventilation. They had also reported flies swarmed everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And that the flies were, quote, especially noticeable on the poor food prepared for dinner.
Neat. Wait, how long between? You said 1902?
That was 10 years later.
Okay.
So this lady from the state goes down there 10 years later, and she's horrified.
Yeah, no kidding. I honestly had thought you said 2 years later, and I was like, wow.
No.
Those dudes were got things to do.
And, the thing that for me is really super interesting about that is that if you think about 1912 at the time, sadly, people really didn't take a lot of stock in what women had to say about things. Mm-hmm. And this woman went down there and visited, and she was so horrified by what she saw that she made them listen to her, and she got it shut down.
Good.
Yeah. Gin break. In 1915, the Almshouse Committee received bids for the construction of a new fireproof building at the location, and in May of 1916, construction had begun. And after construction, a full-time caretaker and his family, they took turns living in the almshouse and a white farmhouse that was formerly on the property. Mm-hmm. Nancy Swinford, who had lived at the home for 8 years during the 40s and 50s, had this to say in a 2009 interview with the Times-Courier. She said, quote, "It certainly did a lot of people a lot of good. There were warm beds, and they had good food on the table, and they loved working and earning their keep. They weren't moochers, they mostly grew their own food, did their own butchering, and smoked their own meat. They killed and dressed all of their own chickens, and they made their own butter." So, clearly things had improved and moved in a different direction
Right.
after they had shut it down and rebuilt.
Yeah, and self-sustaining.
Yeah, and now, this is a whole new building.
Sure.
But yeah, so thank God it got better.
Yeah. Thankfully, the caretakers were like, oh, we actually care about this.
Well, yeah, and now it's not going to burn down. Yay!
With all of the people running amok.
And now there's not, like, insects all over your food
Yeah.
and rats in your walls.
Yeah. And you can probably breathe when you aren't choking on fumes from a stove.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. That's the American dream.
I mean, it should be.
So in 1959, the county sold the almshouse to Ashmore Estates Incorporated. The company then reopened the almshouse as a private psychiatric facility that operated under the simple name of Ashmore Estates. Go figure. Mm-hmm. So only about 5 years after opening as a psychiatric facility, Ashmore Estates ran into some financial trouble, and they had to close down in 1964. So, they took a year, got their finances together, and then they reopened in 1965. And when they reopened, they changed from being a private facility to now accepting patients from institutions that were run by the state, because they were broke as fuck.
Yeah, and they need some sort of money.
Basically, yeah. So they do their thing, and then Ashmore Estates, it changes hands in 1976. Mm-hmm. And it underwent a pretty large addition so that the facility could house more patients, and it reopened in 1981.
Okay, so it's open, closed, open, closed,
Yes.
open, closed.
Change hands. Get shut down. Reopen.
It's like those bars by my parents' house. The one that, like, there's a bar in that area every, 2 years, like a brand new one, and then they, remodel it, and they get closed down, and then another one opens, and then they remodel it, and it gets closed down. It's straight up cursed. I've never seen, since I've been a kid, I think there's been 15 or 20 businesses in there. Mm-hmm. In the same thing, and they're all trying to be bars or nightclubs. It's where Groovies used to be. Remember Groovies?
No, I just like the name.
It was Pharaoh's. It was Clue. It was Big Guys. It's too many. It's like that. It's open, close every 2 years.
I feel like everybody is familiar with a cursed location in their area. Businesses just don't last there.
No.
But for me, the house next door to us is the cursed house. Mm-hmm. So my neighbor's house, I'll just blow through this really quick because I think it's very sad but very funny at the same time. Every time somebody moves in there, one or two of the family members end up dying. And we have new neighbors right now. And when they moved in, I kind of wanted to go ring the doorbell and say hi and introduce myself. And then see if they would invite me in for coffee. And then just be like, oh no, I won't go in there. And then they'll be like, why not? And I'll be like, oh, you haven't heard.
No one gets out alive.
So, like I said, they reopened in 1981. But it didn't last very long because in 1986, the facility closed after, again, running into financial issues.
Perfect.
So, all the money problems in the world for these people. And basically, I guess what happened this time wasn't entirely their fault, though. They had entered a business partnership with another company, and people from the state who were taking care of some of the paperwork for this were dragging their feet and missing deadlines and...
Not the state.
Oh, I mean, go figure. Illinois, of all states, too.
It can't be possible for people to drag their feet on state paperwork.
Didn't we get a trash or a garbage rating or something financially recently? Or we were very close to getting it? We almost got a trash credit rating.
We are, our state as a whole is not doing super great.
But yeah, so that's how the financial issues came about. It's nothing very...
That they did.
Very interesting, to be honest, yeah. So for years, the building sat completely vacant, and it was just vandalized repeatedly. It was, because it's a small town, there's not really a whole bunch out there, and it's just this big, looming eyesore. And also, so this happened because teenagers are the fucking worst. On Halloween night in 1995, I'm assuming it was teenagers, somebody started a fire that completely destroyed what used to be the superintendent's house.
Yeah, I'm a guess.
Yeah, so that no longer really exists because somebody done fucking burnt it down.
Cool, because people are dicks.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until 2006 that the property was purchased by a gentleman named Scott Kelly. And he spent a ton of time like working on just clearing out a lot of the garbage that was in the building.